Doggy! Doggy!
Hello, guys. This is our second show. I'm so excited. My name is Tony, and welcome to Backwoods Brothers. Your name?
I'm Joel, and thank you for joining us for the second show. We are excited, and we love technical difficulties because they always seem to happen at the last second.
Wait a minute, Joel. How excited are you?
I'm really excited.
Really, that yellow hat says it all.
I know. We actually wanted to wear the hats that we have in a picture. We're kind of getting closer to that a little bit, but honestly, this thing is so hot. I'm just going to kind of,
Joel likes to call himself hot. That's really inappropriate.
Well, if you remember during our promo video, I was going to tell you how amazing, or you were going to tell me how amazing I was.
That's right. When you covered my hand and tried to cancel me.
Yeah, which, by the way, you licked my hand. You know that?
Did I?
It was disgusting.
No wonder you did this on
Yeah, you didn't see that? Like,
I was worried about
Mike,
that.
It doesn't taste like candy or anything. This is nasty.
Yeah, but crazy thing about nastiness and all that kind of stuff that happens on TV because everything is like live. I wanted to tell you that because this is a live show, anything could happen, right?
Exactly.
Anything, right?
Like I can totally just cancel you.
Right? How do you do that? Don't
I was hoping like it would be amazing if we had been so synced up that I snapped my fingers and all of a sudden you disappeared. But it didn't really work.
Okay, I'm back now.
So, but we're actually going to be talking about cancel culture today.
Yes. And we're excited about having a special guest with us, right?
Yeah, well, we'll be talking a little bit more about who will be coming on here during our guest period, but that is Michael Anderle. He's actually just sitting off camera, and so he'll be joining us shortly once we get to the next couple segments.
Do you know the cool thing about this is my first time meeting the Michael Anderle. And I tell you what, you're in for a treat. Okay, stick around. By the way, do we want to tell them that you can call in or even type in or something like that?
Yeah, because last time during our first show, we had you guys send us questions, and we basically went through them at the end. We're going to try something different now. Throughout the show, send us your questions, and we'll try to get to one through each segment as we're going through it, and try to answer them as we go. Our technical producer here is crying over here in the corner because he knows that this doubles his workload, but he's going to get through it because John is awesome.
Yes. You know the cool thing about this is if your question, if we can't answer it, don't be offended if we cancel you. Just joking.
We're just going to read it and be like, oh, let's just skip to the next one,
We'll just skip to the next one. No, guys, your questions matter to us, and so please, and I always say this, Joel, remember I said this, and I said there's no dumb questions, just ones we can't answer. So, again,
there are dumb questions.
Oh, that's true.
There really are dumb questions.
Can I ask you a dumb question?
Sure.
Are we on a show right now?
Yes.
Yes.
So that was cheesy.
Oh, stink.
So, anyways, as I do, because I have no life outside of here, I just kind of hang out all day long in my house, and I read Wikipedia, and I was like, I wanted to kind of see what Wikipedia had to say what cancel culture was.
Okay.
And so the actual definition of cancel culture on Wikipedia, cancel culture, or as most known as call-out culture, is a modern form of ostracism. Is it ostracism?
Ostracism.
Yeah, ostrich. Okay, It makes me think of like an ostrich. Anyways, it's a modern form of modern form of ostracism in which someone is thrust out of social or professional circles, whether it's be online or social media or in person. So that's the actual definition for it because we want to be very technical about it. No, it just kind of gives an idea that there is an actual definition between call-out culture, ostracism, or cancel culture. As you can see, cancel culture.
Well, that's funny you say that because didn't you write an article?
I did write an article actually on our website. If you want to read along on the website, as we're kind of going through this, you can learn a little more about cancel culture. There's some pros and cons, and then there's a bunch of different information. But the most important part in there is I want to talk about is the history of cancel culture.
Before we get there, can I actually read you my definition?
Yeah, by all means.
It's not that much different, but it's a definition of cancel culture. It says a practice or tendency of engaging in mass cancellation as a way of expressing disapproval or exerting social pressure. Also, the people who engage in or support this practice.
I feel like your definition is fat shaming.
Really?
Yeah, because it talks about mass and pressure and the same thing. And so therefore, I think you're fat shaming.
You know, interesting part about this is that's my view that I'm going to actually bring to the table.
Oh, really?
The conversation
is
about
great.
Shaming. So
okay.
I don't mean to shame you.
Yes.
But you are mass in personality. There you go.
My wife likes my body.
I
okay.
said mass in personality. Notice.
Hey, I'm a beautiful man.
That's what he said.
That literally is what he said. Anyways, see, now I lost my train of thought. I was going to talk to you about the history.
Yes.
So, anyways, cancel culture is not something new.
Right.
people think it is.
Yeah.
Especially the movement on it's been come up from before. But as I mentioned during the actual definition, it's they identify it as a modern form of ostracism.
Mm-hmm.
Ostracism, when you kind of dig back into that culture, goes all the way back into ancient Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Where they actually used to do cancel culture on a very large level, but it wasn't like it was, today, where you're like, oh, that person has something I don't agree with them. I'm gonna shame them online and see what kind of groups I can get to come in, and we're just gonna try to, kind of push them out of their venue or to whatever other ways people have been canceled, whether jobs or whatever else it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we'll get more into what those are later. But what they used to do is they would get all the citizens together, and they would. Once a year, they'd hold like this voting period where they pick somebody. It could be, let's just say you were a politician and you had some stuff that you had talked about that the rest of the people didn't really agree with. And so they'd all vote. 6,000 people would vote. 6,000 people would all put their votes in, and then the person who actually got voted the highest would be actually kicked out of their hometown. And this was back in ancient Greece. That's a big deal.
Wow.
To be cast out for 10 years. But they could come back. And it could be they didn't have to do anything wrong. Someone had to be booted out every year for 10 years.
Was it based on popularity?
It could be popularity, but usually it's in most cases they focus on politicians and stuff. So it could be based upon a policy that they had brought out and they didn't really like. But it was a way of kind of like I guess balancing in the herd.
You know what? Dinner's ready. Go ahead.
Really? Are we having for dinner? Pot roast?
I think so.
It's actually pot roast earlier.
But
Anyways,
I don't mean to cancel your thought.
Yeah, you totally canceled my thought. Shh. Actually, the phone canceled my thought.
Yeah.
And hands it off to our amazing guest off to the side here to help this out. I lost that totally killed my train of thought.
So the politicians, they would be, yeah.
Yeah. So they would be kicked out for 10 years, and then a lot of them usually didn't come back because 10 years later you built a life somewhere else. But someone would be welcome back, and that happened to some major thinkers back in the day too. So ostracism is not a new thing, or cancel culture is not a new thing, but it was much more organized and it had a purpose to it. And that was like to balance things out a little bit.
To balance things out.
Yeah. So if you look at to modern today, we'd be like, oh, we didn't agree with this one person's or this maybe a group, because it's a pretty large country these days, of politicians. We're just going to vote and we're going to cast them out, but they can't come back for 10 years. We got to kick them out of the country. It's kind of the idea of it. I don't know if that would work so well today, but you get the idea of what it was. It was organized and it had a purpose, and it was to balance things out. But that today has really transferred over time, and it's not the same as we would see today.
Yeah.
So
would one argue that cancel culture is actually a millennial term, or maybe even a Gen Z term?
It very well could be, because it's something that you have seen the word cancel culture come up recently. But it's something that, like I said, when putting it back has gone quite far. So anyways.
So as I put my mic towards my face so that you guys can hear,
We're getting better about this. Yeah. I'm hoping everybody can hear us today because we bought brand new special mics.
Yes. So keep on with this journey
I'm
with
going
us,
to
definitely.
Yes.
But no, I because I was thinking about this. You mentioned something. A vote back in the day, if you will, is different from social media voting.
Exactly. And well,
I think the damage is actually much more.
Oh, the damage can be way much more. And we can get definitely more into that now. I mean, there are some pros and cons that have come out of it over time. If you read in that article, you'll see I took some from procon.com and I listed them in the article because they did a really good job of finding some good points.
Can you give us some?
Yeah. So I'm going to use my notes because while I'm good at memorizing that. Yeah. Well, maybe not. You saw.
But he can write articles. So you want to read it?
Apparently, yes, because I don't have to memorize. So one of the first ones was call-out culture allows. This is a pro. Allows call-out culture. Sorry, call-out culture allows marginalized people to seek accountability where the justice system fails. I mean, I have to agree with that. That's basically the same thing as saying, hey, we see that there's no justice happening here. Like this group is just being left out. We want to get attention for this. So the purpose behind it, I have to completely agree with. I mean, while I don't always agree with the methods that they use, because I think that's where the discussion could come later about that issue. But I think that the purpose and the idea behind that, on that pro is spot on.
So you're talking about accountability?
Basically it's more just kind of giving a voice to people to express their opinions and their views when they don't feel like they're being heard through maybe a normal legal channel or something.
Got you.
So one of the cons of that, though, is also call-out culture amounts to online bullying and can incite violence and threats, even worse than the original offense being called out. So there's many times when we've seen people that have been, like their jobs, their families, their lives. We've seen politicians, we've seen we've seen people that work on the like professional actors and stuff that may have said something or may have done something, even if it was way back in the day, and they're just being hounded and pounded for that now to a point where it's cost them their job and their livelihood and affected their family and everybody around them for a mistake they may have made in the past.
I don't mean to give a spoiler alert to our next show, but along with that, online bullying and this thing called cancel culture, it leads to also in young people, and I did a TED Talk on this, as a matter of fact, as you guys know, I'm a therapist, and so I work with a lot of students in our schools who are recipients of online bullying, and there's a huge suicidal reaction from online bullying and cancel culture.
Oh, of course. And so we're going to definitely be talking about that.
Yep.
In fact, cancel culture is so far reaching that we're going to be talking about the effects it has on people's businesses. We're going to be talking about the effects it has on government. We're going to be talking about the effects it has on people's personal lives, amongst many other avenues that it's had. We're going to do that over the next several next several shows. We're going to try to touch on those. So definitely, if you're into cancel culture and you want to learn more about what it's affecting it, definitely keep following these next series of shows because we're going to be focusing. It's not something we can fit into a 2-hour period.
But the cool thing about our show, and I have to point this out, is we are about authentic dialogue with hearty conversation. Exactly. I said that backwards, but you guys get it if you go visit our website. But the whole idea and the whole premise of this program or the show is to actually engage in conversation and have that freedom to talk and not agree on specific things. But at the end of the day, we respect each other's ideas and opinions, and so that's why I like this platform.
Definitely. Because I mean, we're going to bring people on, whether they agree with us or not, or they have the same thought process.
Hearty dialogue.
We want to have those hard conversations here live, so people can, and not only we can bring up those issues that people are afraid to talk about, the elephant in the room that no one wants to acknowledge.
Are you calling me an elephant in the room?
Did you call me one earlier?
No, I was saying big personality.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Okay, go ahead.
Anyways, so let's get to another
yes. Here
pro.
we go.
Call-out culture. This is a pro. Call-out culture gives a voice to disenfranchised or less powerful people. So that kind of falls into the previous one we were talking about, trying to get justice. But it's also maybe smaller groups that feel like they're missing out of some of the benefits out there. Maybe it's historically marginalized groups. Maybe it's people with disabilities, things like that. That can say it's a chance for them to try to say, well, this company or something, or maybe I can't. There's no handicap access on the sidewalks or this whole area, and so they might go out and they might start railing that online because they've tried to visit the city and they're not getting noticed or identified, or maybe businesses they've written letters to that aren't changing because all their rooms in a hotel maybe they don't have any handicap access to the hotel or whatever it might be. Trying to say, hey, think about us a little bit too. We know that you can't be perfect and you can't serve everybody, but you can put a little thought towards us as well, type of thing. And it's a good tool for that.
Yeah. It gives voice to the voiceless.
Exactly, it can definitely. And again, I'm all about the purpose behind it, but it's the method is what I want to talk about later.
Gotcha.
Call-out culture. This is a con. Call-out culture is not productive and does not bring about social change. That's
arguable.
I think, like I said, when you come down to if you use the wrong methods, I think you can actually get the negative reaction and the opposite reaction sometimes. People it just causes division. But if you use the right methods and you have the right purpose behind it, I think you can actually gain some good ground.
Yeah.
So
be thinking about these guys as we
definitely
listening.
Yeah. And if you have any questions that are coming up in here, so we're about 5.5 minutes out from before our break. Let us know. Send the questions and we'll start trying to answer them best we can.
This is good. You have another one?
Yep, I have another pro. Call-out culture is simply a new form of boycott, a cherished tactic in the civil rights movement and to bring about social change. Boycotting, been around forever.
Yes.
You know, you don't like a business because of something they did or whatever, you choose not to shop there. Your money's your vote.
Mm-hmm.
Always been around. And I completely agree with that. If you don't like something, don't shop there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that.
I know you want to go there.
I want to go to the next change
Yes.
on that one, but we're going to save that for
Yep.
in the next segments because I
Gotcha.
believe that's where it's really set to.
Yes. Can you see I'm struggling with that one? Yeah. You can say it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
things I want to say, but I'm trying to bring it to the right thing because I really want to bring Michael in on some of these too as well, just kind of see what his thoughts are. But right now we're trying to give you the basis of what cancel culture is and kind of get you guys thinking.
But he hasn't thrown anything at you yet, so you're doing pretty good.
No, you see him. He's making notes over there. He's got like a book. It's like, I swear, it's like this big.
You're totally setting him
So
up right now.
he's like grabbing stuff. I think he's gonna like throw things at me. I don't know. So call out culture. This is the con. Call out culture is a slippery slope and leads into intolerance in democratic societies as people systemically exclude anyone who disagrees with their views. Again, it's something I have to agree with in many cases. You've seen it. And that's where the methods have overstepped the purpose and everything else, in my opinion, but I don't want to get into that fully yet.
Yeah.
But those are some of the pros and cons.
It's interesting that you actually mentioned the word real fast, discriminatory.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, I know we'll get into this a little bit more. So.
I'm waiting for the extra statement to that. So
Yes, there's an and.
There is an and?
Yes.
What about a but?
That negates the and.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, but as you can see, there are some really polarized views when it comes down to cancel culture.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that we can kind of find some of the common ground and maybe set some parameters around what would make sense when it comes down to the different pieces of cancel culture and how we can kind of try to have that conversation and maybe even try to understand.
Can I give a little bit of a drive home to this? No one, just like the pandemic, no one is foreign to the potential of being canceled because all of us have that thing that went off, a cell phone. Each of us have Facebook, so once we put something out there, it's out there. So all of us can be a victim, or however you want to put it, of cancel culture. So this is something that we can actually, I hope that...
It's just as easy to be a victim as it is to be the perpetrator too, and not even realize it. So yeah, there's two sides to that.
That's true.
So go ahead.
That's true.
Sorry.
There's absolutely two sides to that: the perpetrator and the victim. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Person that could potentially be that perpetrator or that victim or both. So we cannot wait to have more conversation about this.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to. Some pre-conversations we had with Michael were absolutely amazing, and
Yeah.
I've had conversations with him before.
You know more than I do.
Oh, he's a highly intelligent guy who's got some really good views, and he's really got some made me think a few things. I'm kind of building up his head a little bit right now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with him.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah,
about that too? Hey guys, because this is broadcast locally for the most part, we invite a lot of you to engage Backwoods Brothers. If you feel like you have a view that you want to express,
totally.
then there's ways that you can do that via social media, as well as if you want to become a guest on our show, then there's ways that you can do that as well.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about guests and see if it lines up with the show we got coming on. So
Yeah.
we definitely we are a local show where we want to expand out as best we can.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and for those who might have just been seeing this at a later time, they're not even live right now.
Yeah.
But seeing like the recorded video later, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Backwoodsbrothers.com. You can that's all avenues to come find us. Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah, the tweeter.
Twitter. Did you say Twitter?
Tweeter.
That's an old term, tweeter.
Is it tweeter?
Yeah. Okay.
Anyways,
And what's the other one?
Well, you can find some Soapbox Ninja, but I know we're undergoing some major changes and rebuilding that. So
That's awesome.
there's some cool stuff coming in there, but we'll talk about that down the road when it gets there because this is Backwoods Brothers.
Yes.
So
Did I say
anyways,
Backwoods?
Backwoods.
You said backwards.
Yeah, it's
So-
Backwoods.
Backwoods Brothers. That's right.
Okay, guys. So coming up, we're gonna do a quick little break. We got a video for you. Take them a few minutes to watch it. Grab something to drink, and we'll be right back. When we come back, we're gonna have Michael Anderley with us, and we'll really be diving into both sides of it. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Shame!
thy sentence to be publicly cancelled by having thy head smoked.
This'll
from
be
thy
a good
body,
one.
Yeah, love a good
your
cancelling.
bitty body bits
She's been
aside,
cancelled,
And
yeah?
then shat out on the bog pile of shame for the crime of saying something offensive 11 years ago.
Yeah! 11 years ago!
Let's judge past statements by present-day perspective.
It's like saying the same thing today, kind of!
Hey, don't I get a trial?
No! This is a cancelling! No due process!
We are the jury.
Our anger makes us qualified.
Plus, we're all perfect.
Yeah!
We're all perfect. You may be granted a reprieve if you apologise.
Of course I apologize. I'm sorry that you were offended.
Sorry that we're offended? That's a non-apology!
A non-apology! That's worse than saying nothing.
Well, if apologizing makes it worse, what's the point of apologizing at all?
She hates apologizing.
Cancel her even more!
Fare thee well, and may you never again utter the phrase, F the peasant.
He just said something bad about peasants!
I'm a peasant and I'm offended.
Yeah!
No, I said, she said, F the peasant.
Oh my God! He said it again!
No, I love peasants. I would never say F the peasant. I apologise unreservedly.
That's not a good enough apology!
I thought it was all right.
Ah! An apology apologist! He's for apologies! Get him!
Hey, hang on, I'm confused. Are we against him for being for apologies or against her for being against apologies? Because we...
That's irrelevant. What matters is that you're angry.
But we're supposed to be cancelling her.
Well, that was whole minutes ago. Who knows? Things we say today might be offensive in the future.
She's right. You might have offended me in the future.
Well, you might be offending me in the future right now! Pre-cancel! Pre-cancel!
It's a pre-cancelling!
I hereby increase your taxes by 150%. No? Well, I'm gonna burn your crops too. I'll just get on with it then, shall I?
Could I come along?
Yes, please. Aid with the vehicle.
Hey guys, and we are back. Thank you for joining us and to move it.
Yes, we have a third person. Voila.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look. Hey, you suddenly appeared. So, and also the light that wasn't on before too is now blinding the crap out of me.
Is it?
It's better than the blinking one that gave me epilepsy.
He
last
just
time.
said blinding.
I said
That's not a good thing to say.
Is it blinding or is it too bright?
I
for
have
you?
a block from the camera.
You
so
are.
I'm in good shape, and
you are safe.
my vision's probably not that much better.
So we have something in common.
Right.
Well, we should tell the viewers about you.
Well, yeah. What's to tell? Hey, I'm Mike Anderley, and I appreciate these guys having me on. I was gonna say I brought a make soap out at our farm with some of the byproducts from raising pigs. So, guys, this is for you. This is some Earl Grey and some herb garden. handmade soap from
Handmade
my lovely
soap.
wife.
That smells amazing.
So what he's really trying to tell us is we're a bunch of guys at the table that smell really bad.
Well,
yeah, I
so
think
we
so.
should probably use
And
them.
What can
so
I say?
so I just want to confirm, you just handed us some pig fat, right?
Essentially, some pig fat, some essential oils, and a lot of love.
It smells.
A lot of
It smells really good. I'm going to just be doing this.
Yeah.
This is our Earl Grey. That's really awesome. Thank you so much. I'm
You're welcome.
really excited to try this, and I know
You
my
know-
wife will be too.
I cannot wait to get to know you. I actually first, I met you a couple of minutes ago, literally like almost an hour ago, but I've seen you on Facebook, and I think that what you have to say comes from who you are. But first of all, can you tell us who you are?
Yeah. Tell us
Well, my name's Mike, and we have been in Estacada for 5 years. We bought a piece of property on Copeland Road that used to belong to a dear friend of mine, who was one of my predecessors and teachers. His name was Bill Gibson. So we took his farm 9 years after he passed away, and we have brought it back to life and made it our own. And we're just, happy farm folk that are trying to participate positively in the community and be good neighbors, essentially.
And did you say you've been here for how long?
5 years.
5 years. You've been here longer than me.
Well, and I came to Oregon in February '96, and my wife, I believe, moved here in '98. So we've been in Oregon for 20-some years. We lived in Park Rose, Northeast Portland for a long time. Okay. And I have 2 boys that are almost 7 and 11. Eli and Arlo, behave yourselves at home. I know you're not. So yeah, parenting and husbandry and farming and all the things that go with it.
We know the most difficult job you have, on that farm there. It's actually parenting.
Yeah,
By far.
we found
By
that
far.
out.
That's the one that is the hardest to stay accountable to and stay grounded and patient with. And I mean, that's one of the things that we say is that you get the best parts of it and the worst parts of it every day, all in one.
Yeah.
So you just got to keep moving forward.
You told us a little bit about the coming of age and the changes that happen, and I told you about my daughter. And because this is live TV, I'm going to be very careful, or live, whatever, I'll be careful. But just going through those changes and having the important father-son talk and the mother-daughter talk,
Yep.
which the dad just gets to chime in on a little bit occasionally just to go, yes, that's what she said.
Yeah, and and reflecting on when we were that age and how awkward it was and how weird you thought it was and no one could understand, and just to kind of shed a little bit of light. I mean, I think that's really what we're trying to do with the kids is give them that sense that we've been through this, even though you might not believe it. And we had our struggles, we learned our lessons, we made it through. We became fairly normal adults, and you'll do the same. You'll have a chance of navigating this and finding your way through it too. So.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, since we're kind of talking about your kids and stuff, we had a viewer actually ask a question on here that we wanted to give a chance to put out here. It says, based on the way our newer generations rely on social media platforms, how would you prepare and engage your children on these platforms?
Well, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll jump in and give my 2 cents on that one. It's really tricky. Like I said, my oldest is 11, and he already has friends that are that have iPhones and that have social media accounts and sort of operate as small adults. We're a little bit more reluctant to that. Essentially, our life on the farm gives us an opportunity to kind of reverse engineer that modern advancement into our lives. When I was listening to Joel talk about the pros and the cons earlier of cancel culture, it definitely made me think that, like you pointed out, a lot of these elements in human interaction have existed forever, but we just didn't all get to see them in real time.
Yes.
Because the world wasn't operating like that. So, to be totally honest, we are trying to keep our children from that plunge into the technological abyss and all of the things. It's so complicated. I mean,
how's that working for you?
Right.
Yeah.
It's sort of. I mean, we have the opportunity to say go outside. you know, and go run around the woods.
Yes.
And go light something on fire, or take this knife and a BB gun and go play with it. And you know, I think that those things were fairly normal for me in the 80s, and now they seem so foreign that it's almost a novelty to just say, you know, we feel really fortunate to be able to say, go run around the woods because you need to be bored. You need to find something to do.
Yeah, you got to use your creativity, get that critical thinking piece of your mind going, try to understand, you know, be a kid and learn about that part. Today it's so easy when you just kick on, you know, YouTube or the social media and you watch these videos. They get locked into them and they kind of let them do the videos do the thinking for them. Yeah. So the minute that the TV is out of the hand and they don't have that entertainment in front of them, they kind of get this breakdown because they're instantly bored. Instant gratification's gone.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't have the thinking as far as entertainment being done for them.
I love what you said about instant gratification because there is a dopamine rush to all of this.
Right.
We used to have dopamine rush by just going outside and, like you said, making a ramp and jumping and with your bicycle. That's something I did before I lost my eye. But you know, now the dopamine rush is in the clicks. It's in the likes. It's in the, and you see a kid's emotional construct change so much based on what is acceptance and rejection through likes.
I'll say with that type of emotional response, that's actually where, you know, you see cancel culture having its biggest effect, because a lot of responses is like you see something that hurts your feelings, you are maybe you're offended by it or something. It causes that immediate dopamine, immediate response to kind of come out, and that's usually where a lot of the initial cancel culture can start too, and that would be like the hurtful side of it, possibly.
Right. Yeah, I think that it's a very well-intended, or no, I should say not well-intended strategy to sort of exploit our most basic human needs and emotions on triggering these reactions. I mean, and like you made me think of my youngest loves to watch videos of other people playing video games, and I've been struggling to understand how that could be entertaining, and literally he can do that for an hour at a time. And I'm like, this is someone else playing a video game, right? That they recorded and then put up as a video. And it's the greatest thing ever. And it is sort of just like you're saying, you get those synapses firing, and you get that surge. You know, so much of our experience as humans is really a chemical reaction to what we're observing or taking in. But then, you know, like you're saying, that can be exploited pretty easily, just sort of based on our normal human impulses.
Yes.
Well, you know, back in the day, before social media was a thing for us as adults or as kids, it was if you wanted to take action on something because you were upset about it, you had to write letters, you had to talk to your friend, maybe go on the news, or whatever it might be. It took work to get there.
Yes.
And these days, with that immediate instant gratification, immediate response, you know, you can go, oh, I don't like the color of this paper, so I'm going to find the manufacturer is, you know, bad in XYZ or whatever it might be. And you could do that right there from your platform, hit a share button, and then it'll take someone else to share it. Next thing you know, it's viral.
Right.
It could go viral. So
then you add another caveat to that is how many of you guys press share before you proofread what you said? you at least when you wrote that letter, you had a chance to change a little something.
Text correction.
Yes.
We're also dependent on the spelling being corrected by the computer. That oftentimes it
doesn't do
it.
Even spell checks sometimes get you pretty bad. We had someone point out today. I'm the one who administers our website. I had misspelled dialogue, and it had been up there for weeks, and no one caught it in our entire crew, including families and everything else, until our crew finally stumbled across it today and mentioned. He goes, "Oh, you know, you're missing 2 letters on there." I'm like, "Oh, whoops." Yeah, but I mean, and that was spell check, because apparently, the word I used is spelled another way. So we also become dependent on that type of feature as well, rather than being, like I said, the critical thinking piece of it. We start to lose that over time.
My claim to fame in grad school was spell check.
Yeah. I happen to know Walking Grammarly, the friend of ours who I now have her checking things.
Yep.
So, but we actually have another question that was sent to us as well, and I wanted to bring this one up since we're kind of on the subject as well. Do you believe that our future will be based off the views our social media platforms receive? And the views are in quotes here, so I mean, I don't know if they mean like views, like how many people see it, or like the views of like videos.
We were watching something. I can't even remember specifically what it was, but it was some sci-fi kind of series that was out, and it was all about set in the future and how people had social media scores that were sort of their social value, and if you lost ground on what your score was, then you became more isolated and more limited to what was available to you socially. And I kind of was like, oh man, is that where this is going?
You might need you to backtrack 1 minute, and your batteries might be.
So, anyways, so the funny things with live stuff is, battery packs can die even though we just changed batteries.
That's right. That's
so,
right.
And I promise you, didn't sabotage you, Michael.
No, because he had a lot of great stuff to say. So, once we're back up, let us know.
Yeah. So, anyways, but so jumping back over, just want to keep us on track of the cancer culture. So, one of the things we asked Michael here to talk about was to talk a little bit about some of the pros that he might see in cancer culture, or even the cons. I mean, I'd like to kind of see what his views were, because he's got some really diverse views on both sides. And I mean, we wanted to kind of get a real rounded conversation about these. Also, I want to make sure we kind of touch a little bit about, some of the things that maybe cancel culture can do to hurt America as well. So, and the kind of like the people of it. So, is your mic pack back up, or?
What do we got?
So the comment was, he sounds like he's far away.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to figure out how to get him sounding less far away.
Okay.
I am right here.
Yes, we want to bring him closer.
I guarantee you, he's close.
He's close. Yes, but
do I smell like the soap?
Yes, actually, the soap smells really good. I'm kind of excited about it.
Right.
So, but
yeah.
So I guess talk louder in the meantime.
Yeah, no problem. I can definitely do that. I like the opportunity to touch on that. It definitely coincides into some of the things that I find the most challenging, which is parenting, because we're trying to raise young men who are honest and accountable and contributors and everything else. Oh, hey.
I'll do that.
We're just trying to hear him, guys.
It is all very awkward.
We respond to
So, I think one of the things that we strive to teach is accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a little bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to the swiftness and the decisiveness that the technological world can bring to mistakes that humans inevitably make, and it is sort of forcing us to become more accountable in the moment. And if you're not really thinking about what you're saying, or you're acting on emotions, or you're just sort of, I'm definitely the kind of guy that shoots first and asks questions later, and that can really destroy a lot of things that you've spent years trying to build, not only within interpersonal relationships, but professionally, and your standing in the community and your friendships. So I see that there's I like the accountability, but also I see the damage that can be done, because people have this emotional natural tendency too. We practice something at our kids' school called restorative justice. Mm-hmm. And restorative justice is essentially, rather than trying to administer a punishment, you are trying to actually backtrack and let every member, not only the perpetrator and the victim, participate in a solution. A lot of times what you find is that the people who are doing the harm are also suffering in a way that needs to have some kind of attention. And I was starting to really like that. And I think ultimately what this comes down to is making us more responsible as individuals for our own actions, and not being able to sort of back out and say, oh, well, I didn't say that because, and that's not what I meant. Well, like you're saying, most things nowadays, especially with social media, are forever preserved. So, and I'm absolutely guilty of saying stupid things on the internet that in retrospect I'm like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have really, I should have thought about that a little bit more. I could have been much kinder and a little bit more considerate, or maybe I didn't know that person's backstory and I should have asked some more questions before I made those comments. So all those things in hindsight biased, it's like more about learning how to be accountable in the moment, and
in the moment.
Yeah,
right.
And
right.
It's definitely true, but I think that, like, at least talking about social media, I think there's also a big section in there that where you and I are having a conversation face to face. You can see my facial expression.
Right.
You can hear the inflection and tones in my voice. You can see my body language. But when we look on social media, I mean, short of it being like a video, you see a text or a statement made. In a lot of cases, you can't always inflect the demeanor in that statement, or what the backstory, anything else is to that statement. So you can say, a very particular statement. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but you can make a statement that would be inferred one way by simply just reading it, versus using a normal conversation might come out completely different meaning to it, or what. And so I think it's so quickly, and we've seen it over and over again, where someone might make a statement not knowing the backstory, not knowing the actual voice behind it, or the demeanor or the meaning behind it, and then they just run with it. And that's a damage that we can see a lot of times is, and then when someone tries to bring forward that, hey, this is what I was really trying to say, or this is what I was really trying to put out, we're like, you're just trying to cover yourself. And that's just completely dismissed, and it's never taken into account that, hey, there might have been a misconstrued voice there. And so I think that's part of the damage of the cancel culture.
That's almost accusation culture, you know?
And it's guilty before trial, guilty without trial culture. So.
What's
I like that
accusation culture. What's that rule of thumb we used to teach your kids, though? I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to date myself. I don't like, and I'll say this right now here, I don't necessarily like text for that reason, because you miss so much of what we call communication. 90% of communication is visual. So if you don't have that, it's going to leave a lot of room for misunderstanding.
Well, and a lot of that was even lost within the last year of everyone wearing masks. And you can't. You start to understand how much of our communication as humans is really based around what our mouths are doing. And when you can't see someone speak, you're like trying to gauge their emotions on their eyebrows. And what their eyes are doing. And I was like, oh, I'm having a really hard time. Some of it, I have pretty poor hearing as a musician, and so I really need to be able to see someone's mouth when I'm speaking with them.
I like fish.
I
like fish. I mean, I guess you can see it in my eyes a little more, but again, that's a good statement right there. When someone is kind of pouting about the fish, and you just if you see that written, there's no way to really know that.
Well, and here's my other point too: is we teach our kids what you put out. Think about what you put out, because just because you might delete your comment doesn't mean that the other screenshotter has that delete button too.
I'm assuming that we're all 40-some-year-old-ish kind of people.
Sorry, y'all.
Imagine if you were 13 years old and you were navigating puberty and high school and popularity, and you had an iPhone in your pocket, and you said all the kind of ridiculous things that I hear the 12 and 13-year-olds say, and then you had to be accountable for that. To maybe a future employer, even if it was at a fast food place when you were 15, who said, oh, well, he said, this. I mean, it's one thing to sort of take the principles of cancel culture and apply them to someone who is in a very visible leadership position, who says something very culturally insensitive or outlandish.
Yes.
That's a pretty clear line. But then when you get into, oh, well, I looked at your social media stuff from 4 years ago when you were 16, when we were considering your application for grad school, and you're like, oh, what did I? Oh no, what happened? And
you're not going to remember what you did.
Right.
That's the thing, is that
the internet never forgets.
The
internet never forgets.
Cancel culture has, and the video we showed before this, it really touches on that. Is that we're, just because we have an opinion or a view, or I'm going to use the word woke because that's what we seem to know. We're woke today. Doesn't mean that's who we were back then.
Right.
And so, but they're going to hold you guilty. And the thing is that also was well mentioned in that video is, even when someone tries to realize, okay, yeah, I made a mistake back then, I'm sorry, it's like, no one wants to accept that. And they still want you to, hammer down on that. And I mean, of course, that's not every single case out there, but it seems to be the big part of it, is that, they're going to punish you despite what's happening. So, and it's, and like you said, we're the sum of our experiences. Who we are is defined by the things that mistakes we've made, the experiences we had, the cultures that we've lived in, the schooling we've done, all these different things. They're who build who we are. So if we live a completely perfect life and we never say the wrong thing, then we don't understand the other half of that. We got to make the mistakes. We got to say the dumb things. We got to do the dumb things, or we're not going to be a well-rounded person to understand that.
Well, actually, that's funny you say that, because I love what both of you said about that. I was on the other end of it, where I had a job where I hired employees, and I had to go back and look at their social media.
Right.
And that was one of their references, per se, and whether they wanted it or not, they had a reference on social media. But I always made it a practice that if I saw something questionable, that I go ask that person, what was the thought behind this? I saw this, I saw this. Because don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, we used to say that. But do we actually do it?
Right.
So I had to look back at that.
And you're touching on a very good piece there, is that you may see something in someone's history that was questionable, but you went back and you've asked that question. Hey, what's the actual story, the meaning, the history, the circumstances surrounding that particular thing that actually gives a definition to it, rather than judging it by today's understandings of what's going on. That's the big difference is that, what damages people, what's damaging the American society and our culture and way of life, is by not getting that full picture, not doing, I want to say, the legwork to figure that out, and then just acting before understanding.
But here's the thing, and we haven't gotten here yet, but don't people have responsibility, though, for their own actions?
Completely. I mean, wouldn't you hold your kids accountable for the...
And shouldn't certain people be careful about what they put out there?
Yeah, and so, fortunately or unfortunately, all ages are welcome to participate in social media. Would I hold a 14-year-old responsible the same way that I would hold a 34-year-old responsible? Absolutely not. Taking into consideration what Joel was pointing out, it's just if we're not making mistakes and we're not failing, then we're not growing, we're not learning, and we're not getting better. So, one thing that I was thinking of when you both were touching on your points was what has happened to forgiveness, and where did it go? Clearly the people that raised me did a lot of forgiving, and they were very considerate, and they were very patient, and those are all principles that I have taken with me. Now, whether the modern expression in my life is still implementing those things is, maybe in question, because I think that's what's happening, is we're all getting so wrapped up in how fast our lives are moving at this digital speed, that we're not sitting down at the end of the day without a screen to go over our experiences and think about the things that were said to us and think about the things that we said, and really reflect on those kind of things. Maybe that's it. The reflection is missing.
Oh, exactly.
Because we have this sort of record that's being kept, I wouldn't necessarily say on our behalf, but a record is being kept of our experiences, at least in a digital sense, and we're not, we no longer have the opportunity to go through and reflect on those things ourselves.
Well, yeah, the world moves at such a high, fast pace today. It's like it seems like we never slow down. It's the minute we get up, the first thing we do is grab our phone and go, oh, what's the bank account, Facebook, whatever it is that's going on.
Sure.
Check what my friend's doing, and then you get up, you get ready for school, or you're doing your schoolwork, or you're working throughout the day, and you're on social media checking things out, or you're doing your job. You come home and you're checking things going on, maybe watch some TV, and then it's almost time for bed, and you go to bed, and then then it's check everything right before you go to sleep. Last thing you do is look at that, and if you're like most people today have a TV in their room in a lot of cases, so they're watching TV before they go to bed, and then they sleep. There's that period of reflection. I mean, I'm guilty of the exact same thing. Is not there, and whereas you go back, 10 maybe 20 years, that wasn't the case. I mean, it was okay. I'm going to read a book.
Yep.
Or I'm just turn off the lights and just fall asleep. Or maybe I sit there and think about, okay, so I got this done today, and then I keep myself up for hours trying to go, man, I didn't get all this, and this done, but I'm still thinking about something. I'm trying to process that through my head. No, it's just the processing time. It seems to have definitely slipped away.
Oh, it makes me think of my grandpa sitting on the back porch in his rocking chair eating sunflower seeds. And I always thought, what is he doing? And now I'm like, oh man, I wish I had that.
That sounds nice.
Right.
To sit back.
Yeah.
I know that's when I was in North Dakota. I knew some people that much more wisdomous in years. That actually that's what they did in the end of the day. They had a nice big patio. Whether it was a brand new house or not, nice big patio with all the stuff out there and a nice view or something. Whether they're looking over the backyard or they're looking over their fields, they would sit out there, and I'd catch them in the evening, and they're just reflecting, drinking a glass of iced tea or something. Or in the winter, they'd look out the big window because it's like 16 below.
So what I think I hear you both saying actually is because things move so fast, we don't have time to think about what we put out there before we do. Number one, and we don't have that time to, think about what you're going to say before you say it, or to reflect, to give the pause.
Right. There is that foresight too is gone, because you just are so. I mean, most of us are guilty of just waiting to talk.
Right.
I think that's even. I'm experiencing that right now as
At
I hear ideas bubbling around, and I want to interject, but really. It is that like patience, I think that's we're also being robbed of our patience, because we don't have to wait our turn to be heard,
But the important part is to be heard.
Correct. Now, and that's one of the pros that you brought up earlier is within these platforms, you do give everyone sort of an equal opportunity to be heard, or I can send Beyonce a DM and she might get it. I mean, she's not going to get it.
She got it.
Did she
get it? I'm glad to know you.
Okay, now we established she likes Beyonce.
Please, Beyonce.
We're gonna have her on the show.
She never hit
2 weeks.
I think you also touched on something that I'm trying to learn myself, especially as I I've moved into politics and other things, is to slow down. And I catch myself many times wanting to put that thought out right away before it's taking a minute to go, okay, yeah, that makes sense, or letting someone else speak to let them get it all out, and then I want to be able to jump right into that conversation. So
right.
All right. Well, speaking of jumping into that conversation, we're going to give the pause a little bit, and we're going to take a break. And when we get back, of course, please keep on bringing your questions in, your comments. It would be really good to know what you guys are thinking, because we're getting to that tension point where we really get into what cancel culture can look like if it's run amok, or vice versa. So can't wait for you to come back with us. Hit that like, subscribe button as well. Tell your friends about it. We'll see you back. Hi, welcome to Stillwaters. Glad you're here. I'm an LPC and I'm licensed with the state of Oregon. The first time you come, you will be coming as a client and then quickly change into a guest. You may have some questions about what it's like to come and see a therapist. I will come and greet you at the door. You're going to get greeted by our receptionist, who is the intake coordinator. She will get you to fill out a couple of forms. And then what we will do is I will greet you. We have some coffee, we have some tea, we have some water. The way we set up our facility here is to inspire a safe place where you can feel like you're being heard. Our mission at Stillwater is to inspire change through listening with love. So we always hope that that is your experience as you come through. Sessions are as long as you need them. So you have your choice there. There's no limitation on how much you come see me. If you are looking for a therapist, then you can find me on Psychology Today out of Estacada, Oregon. We look forward to talking with you, and we're excited that you have chosen us to come alongside of you on this journey. Hi, welcome to Stillwaters. Glad you're here. I'm an LPC and I'm licensed with the state of Oregon. The first time you come, you will be coming as a client and then quickly change into a guest. You may have some questions about what it's like to come and see a therapist. I will come and greet you at the door. You're going to get greeted by our receptionist, who is the intake coordinator. She will get you to fill out a couple of forms. And then what we will do is I will greet you. We have some coffee, we have some tea, we have some water. The way we set up our facility here is to inspire a safe place where you can feel like you're being heard. Our mission at Stillwater is to inspire change through listening with love. So we always hope that that is your experience as you come through. Sessions are as long as you need them. So you have your choice there. There's no limitation on how much you come see me. If you are looking for a therapist, then you can find me on Psychology Today out of Estacada, Oregon. We look forward to talking with you, and we're excited that you have chosen us to come alongside of you on this journey.
Hey, welcome back to Backwoods, brothers.
Backwards is right.
Sorry about that. I was really enjoying these things, man. These things are awesome. I bet you we're going to run through these really quick. How do I get more of these?
They actually last longer than normal detergent soap because they're not as chemical. It's but the name of the soap company is Luxlard, Luxlard, and we have an Instagram page that sort of features the things that we do around the farm, and also my wife distributes on Etsy. So if you just punch in Luxlard, you can order directly from us, and you're supporting a small family farm.
Yeah, we'll see if we can put. You said Luxlard. What? How do you find it again?
Luxlard. It's on Etsy, and then you can contact us on Instagram as well.
Okay, so
we'll
see if we get our producer to put that link up on there and maybe share it into the chat, and then we'll try to throw it in the website.
We're gonna make your wife so busy.
We'll just pack your whole living room full of soap, and it'll just always smell like that.
Hey,
there you go.
Christmas gift.
It's a great gift. It's a great Christmas gift.
Yeah.
This is the point in our show last time where we really wanted to kind of bring everything we've been talking about together to really get that that discussion going and to make sure we're kind of really touching on the points that are hard for everybody to touch on. So, and
before we do that, can I give my little counseling moment? Because every show, we are practicing active listening, and we're giving a skill, or we're teaching a skill to have a conversation that's tough around the dinner table, since they're happening around the dinner table. So what we've been doing for this month is practicing active listening. So in active listening, you don't need to agree, you just need to kind of parrot back what you've heard. Can you parrot back what you've heard from me?
What?
See, it works for good people like him. He said what? Did you say what? Okay. So active listening is the counseling tool that you can use this month. I want to hear about it.
So you've been talking a lot about different perspectives when it comes down to cancel culture, and some of those things might be about the pros that you've mentioned about how it's given us a good ability to kind of get our voice out there and kind of get that little guy voice out there. But at the same time, it's been damaged when it's been overused and it's been used more of a weapon versus a tool to actually bring out real critical issues. And sometimes it's been more than used once as a political weapon. I would say because cancel culture even falls into the censorship. That's what it is in a lot of cases, is censorship. Mm-hmm. And you've seen that a lot under like Facebook and Instagram and all. If they don't agree with you, they just cut your account out. I mean, they didn't agree with what happened with the MyPillow guy, then like Chuck Lindell, I think his name is, with Trump, with a couple other of his advisors, people in his party. They just deleted their accounts. Boom, gone. Rather than allowing him to speak his mind and people to have that discussion online or to have a back and forth, they just boom, gone because they didn't agree with what he was saying. Mm. They canceled him, and people would call that censorship.
So, do you think that former President Trump was responsible for the things that happened January 6th with the words and the tweets and the essentially instigating things? I mean, I'll say this. My read on the canceling of his social media accounts was these private companies essentially are covering their ass because at the end of the day, they have some liability that they could potentially face in a legal sense.
It isn't a disclaimer. It's in a disclaimer that you can't do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if that was the true case, then over the course of the last year, we'll just focus on the riots in Portland.
Right.
We've actually seen where there's been arrangements for a lot of these groups to come together that have set buildings on fires and everything else. They've used it for them, and even when they've been identified and called out to the group, nothing happened to their social media accounts.
Right.
So if it was an equal response across the board, then I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But the fact is that it's been an unequal balance to it, and that's what makes it wrong in my book.
Well, my thought is that there's definitely a difference between a couple millennial anarchists in tight jeans in Southeast Portland who are lighting stuff on fire in the name of whatever kind of social progress they're trying to instigate, and the leader of the free world rallying up a mob about whatever his opinion was about how an election was compromised. And, you know, within all of the BLM protests that happened this summer and the things related to that, there were no deaths. No officers were killed. We had 5 people die at the Capitol, and I think that could have been avoided, or maybe that protest could have taken a more effective and peaceful approach without the influence that Trump sort of spun on it, you know?
Yeah, and I don't want to take this too far down into specifically about the Trump area.
It's a rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely
especially when we're talking about social media.
Yeah,
too,
we're wanting to talk about
that rhetoric was actually faced.
Yeah, and
platform
and to keep it onto the cancel culture conversation and using Trump on this one here, you know, he was canceled out, but there was a lot of stuff was identified through the FBI's investigations that say, through social media and everything else, these things were actually arranged weeks and even months before this ever happened.
And there was a lot of people involved.
Before his conversations and before his posts and tweets and anything else were ever out there about it. So this was something that was going to happen, whether he had that conversation or not. So, and that was also arranged on social media. And so the fact that they canceled his account saying that he played into causing this big issue there, but only to find out the evidence is opposite-wise, but they've had no retraction on their actions. Otherwise, why aren't they being called into accountability? Those large companies like Twitter and Facebook, they cut his account out, but there's proof otherwise saying it wasn't the main cause, according to the FBI.
And they're no doubt censoring people, you know. So it really toes a fine line between a private for-profit business and then also this platform that gives everyone a chance to exercise free speech. So I guess what we found is that there is a sort of critical mass to the limits of social media and how far you can take it.
Oh, exactly. So let me ask you this one: do you think social media should be regulated on the First Amendment? You know, they're a private company, but because of the exposure and the impact that they can have, do you think there should be some regulations to basically force them to not be censoring in the manner that they are?
So I'm going to sort of spin this a little to the side because I'm 40-something and for the most part analog. I didn't really realize until somewhat recently that a lot of the dark corners of social media happen in private groups.
Yes.
Where people can say just about anything they want without having sort of the repercussions that you would on a normal post that just follows on everybody's thread. Right. So, there's intent that follows into that. You can have a private page that talks about how you think that the cheeseburgers down at the local restaurant are garbage and, you don't like how the parking lot's arranged or whatever. And then you can have these groups that are planning, domestic attacks and things like that. And so do I think that there has to be some kind of threshold? Yes. I don't think that the First Amendment gives us the right to infringe on anyone else's experience and liberty and safety or anything to do with who and how they were created by whoever they believe in. But, when your intent is to harm, then you've crossed the line. I think that First Amendment argument is really coming into play, and it's a little tricky, but there are pretty clear definitions of what falls into hate speech and what falls into threatening someone.
It's really nuanced.
It's very nuanced, and the lines have been blurred because that creates more confusion.
Yeah.
I want to read a question that one of the questions, we have a few questions here from some viewers, sorry. So one of these, and this kind of plays into a little what we're talking about. What are your opinions on how offended people get over what we consider not offensive? Do you think that the newer age generations are not as desensitized to topics and things that the older generations were?
Ooh, that's a two-parter.
It is a two-parter, and we can break that down if you want to.
Let's break that down. Yeah.
So let's start with the first one. What are your opinions on how offended people
Good
get
question.
over what some people may consider not offensive, and that can play well into what we're talking about with the censorship. Like, while we may look at something and say, that doesn't make sense for it to be censored because it's not offensive to me, while other people might be getting offended by that, or the company may be removing it or something.
So my thought is that there are a lot of things in the modern world that I don't necessarily understand. There's a lot of things in the modern world that are being considered that I don't have any experience with. One thing that I'm thinking of is as it pertains to gender identity nowadays. I'm still from a fairly kind of old school background, and I've never had any personal experience with any kind of anything but a typical gender identification. However, that doesn't mean that my experience is the status quo. And I have to be able to adapt and learn about someone else's experience, because that's just being an empathetic human, is to say, you're different than I am, and you have a different set of experiences, and I'm going to honor that by learning about you. So, we're not always going to understand each other. And I think that that's an important thing. Tony and I were talking a little bit about our religious backgrounds earlier, and one thing that we're trying to present to our kids is the mystery of not knowing, and being okay with not knowing.
Absolutely.
And so as far as it plays into what's offensive and what's not offensive, let's say offense is in the eye of the beholder.
More subjective, would you say?
Right. Now, do people cry wolf? And are there people whose emotional strategies are victimization? Certainly. Everyone has sort of this strategy of moving through the world and essentially getting what they need. That's kind of a normal part of being a human. What I find offensive and what you find offensive are probably wildly different.
If I could say, although there are some cultural norms,
right?
Like the N-word would be
taboo,
offensive,
right?
Yeah.
Well, and one thing I've heard recently are people that say, "Well, they say it, but we can't say it," and I'm like, "Man, is this really a question?"
Now you're gonna get me started, though.
Please,
because
go ahead.
I believe this is what I believe, and I believe that we shouldn't be saying it either. Now it doesn't give. The argument is. I won't even touch that with a 10-foot pole, because I teach my daughter just because he said it doesn't mean you can say it.
Right, right.
So are you going to follow the crowd or whatever? Because you hear him say that about himself, that doesn't mean you can say that about him either. It goes back to, I can treat my brother any kind of way I can treat him, but don't you dare treat my brother that way.
Right.
But I don't believe that it's okay for an African American, a Black American, to call themselves that either, or each other that. No, they don't.
Well, and again, I think that the intention comes back into play. Hopefully everyone out there that is a well-adjusted adult knows the history of oppression and racism in this country, and slavery, and we understand that those things were initiated to be dehumanizing and derogatory and controlling and oppressive. So that was the intent. You know what I mean? And I think that there's a group of people who are trying to take the power away from that original intent and reclaim and give that in an empowering position. But again, that has nothing to do with me as German, Irish, Russian, American, because that's not part of my identity. And so again, that's not That's not for me to decide.
So to kind of give you a little bit of polarize and kind of drive the conversation, and I'm gonna keep us focused on the cancel culture piece of it. So, in speaking of rights, you mentioned earlier about how someone might be offensive and there be a subjective view of like you may be offended by something that I'm not, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of far as like our First Amendment rights in order to speak out and speak our mind, what is your view at the point, and this is the view I kind of take, is that you have your First Amendment rights and your rights guaranteed under the Constitution, or your rights up until the point where they start to infringe on my rights.
Right.
So and we'll use something you talked about a little bit too, touch on racism and everything else, but also about kind of our history piece. So when they're like, should I not have the right myself to view a statue and to remember history in my own subjective view of it, such as, I believe that to remember that, yes, that person may have did something wrong, but at the same time, they also may have done things too, such as, they may have won a battle, this and that, to remember that portion of it, and to also remember some of the bad things they did for the purpose of making sure that we don't go that route again.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you see just again for the purpose of a conversation, when someone sees that thing and they're like, oh, that offends me, I'm going to tear it down.
Right.
I mean, where's that line that would you say, well, what would be your opinion on those lines? And
well,
how do you come to the common ground?
I don't see a lot of people flying the British flag in some kind of a historical remembrance of the previous empire that ruled us. The fact of the matter is the Confederacy lasted 4 years and was defeated, and the Union survived, and slavery ended, supposedly. And like when it comes to those sort of Confederate war statues and monuments, I think they should all go. I don't think that's a part of our history that we cling to. I don't think that's a part of our history that we honor. I think that's this is the problem with the dichotomy of living as Americans, is that we all love America. I mean, I would assume, I am very grateful for the opportunity that I have to live here, and I love where I live, and I love the people that I know, but we have a very troubling and frankly disgusting history of dehumanization and oppression and genocide and murder, not only amongst people that were subjected to the slave trade, but I have an adopted brother in the Midwest who is Lakota Native American. And when you talk about that demographic, you're talking about the government literally systematically destroying an entire group of people. And they've survived, and they are prospering. Prospering? I'm questioning whether I'm even speaking correctly. So let me give you an example. I'm from southern Minnesota. I spent my first 18 years there, not far from Mankato, which is where the Minnesota River passes through. And at the library in downtown Mankato, there's a statue of a native chief wearing a big headdress. And I always drove by it as a kid, and I was like, oh, that's a cool statue. I wonder what it... Well, it's memorializing the mass execution of 87 natives on that location, sometime in the 1800s. And rather than hearing the real story of what happened, we just saw this nice statue of a Native American and thought that it was some kind of cultural, acknowledgement or something like that. And so I think that that's kind of part of the trick of how history has been written, or how we remember history, is that if we put up a statue of a Confederate general or war hero, then we're praising that person. It's not really any different than everybody knows the name of the person who murdered an individual, but rarely is the individual remembered. you know. So we side with, or we remember the horror rather than the human. And I think that, you know, that's really tragic, that's kind of part of the shock culture that also translates to the cancel culture of saying, wasn't this terrible? Can't you see how tragic it was? That's what we want you to remember, rather than the story of the individual behind that essentially, you know, was harmed. So I kind of lost track a little bit on where my point was.
I think going around, you're talking a little bit about behind, you know, understanding the story of it. And I want to take us back to something you mentioned earlier, which was you had talked about the Confederate side of things. It was only around for 4 years. And so just to, again, kind of bring a different view to that, while I agree, a lot of bad things completely happened in there, that was half of one of the worst times in our country's history, which was our Civil War.
Right.
And by removing the things that bring forward to make us have those conversations, those statues, those memorials, the flags, things like that, they may be there for memorial, but they also can be used there as a way to have that conversation to say, what happened here? Why is this here? What's the history behind it? So we understand the things that went wrong there and why we should be avoiding that. Because they say those who don't know your history are doomed to repeat it. And so, it's been seen over history for so long. When the history is erased from a country, they tend to start to fall back into it. And so, while yes, some statues I believe are very problematic, there's still, I believe that some statues that you can't just say, at least in my opinion, I don't think you just say every Confederate statue needs to be torn down. I think there's some that are there that it would cause a more in-depth conversation and a remembering of, hey, this is maybe something good or this is something bad that happened about it. And let's remember the history of it so we understand what we don't want to do again, and so we can keep that fresh. And that's why
it's assuming
that's a flip side to understanding the good part.
Yeah.
But if we always remember the good stuff, we're going to want to kind of lean back towards that. But if we don't have a little bit of, it's like pain. You burn yourself on a stove, you know, don't touch it again.
Right.
And when you see that stove, you're going to remember that, or the hot glowing ember, you remember that. So that's a memorial to it, in a way. And so there's that flip side.
Well, and that's like an imprint, I would say.
An imprint. Absolutely.
So,
yes.
You know, I mean, I'm definitely having an emotional response to any kind of. I mean, I feel like the problem here is that 95% of the history of the United States is horror and genocide and murder and oppression, and we have this story of you know, an immigrant story from Europe, and you know, oddly enough, as German and Irish background, my ancestors were immigrants, all of them, and they were treated like dirt when they arrived here too. We're just kind of tumbling this cycle of like, well, who's the newest immigrant and where are they from and what's their problem and why should we take care of them, when that's everyone's, well, everyone who came here by their own free choice. That's their story, and most of the people that have come to the United States have been treated and mistreated, and there's not a whole lot of wonderful things to look back on other than you know, the technological era. I mean, we're so enamored with development and industry and money. I mean, this is a conversation I had recently with a friend of mine. People oftentimes say, well, you know, white America especially doesn't really have any culture. And sort of in a very general sense, I think that's true, but I think even deeper than that, what's happening to us as Americans is that our culture is a money culture, and it's a consumer culture. And so we identify, right, we identify as your value as an individual is based on how much money you have and what you've accumulated, and then consequently what you own and what kind of influence your money and your allows you to have, what kind of power you can have with your money, and that's our identity. The problem is that's completely soulless and artificial, and so we are sort of becoming these vacant, cultureless, identityless people that don't really know who we are. I mean, you're a therapist. The United States has a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do to overcome our past, and you can't just sort of sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, both. My only concern about statues and cancel culture is, where does it stop? Where does it end?
Right.
In Washington, D.C., I grew up in Washington, D.C., monuments everywhere. We talked about that. Go down the mall, you have a monument for everything.
Everything.
But I also loved going to Frederick Douglass's house.
Yep.
Which, the African American and his mansion. And so I was inspired walking into Frederick Douglass's house. I was inspired to walk in there as an African American, and my concern is, where does it end? Where do we stop? Where does the buck stop? If it's okay to do it here, is it okay to do it there? Is it okay? And I want to be able to take my mulatto mixed daughter to see Frederick Douglass's home, as well as Lincoln's. So. Or
we really forgive ourselves. And I don't know. I can't speak to that as someone who deals with systemic racism, and I don't have the same kind of experiences that you have living in your body. But I think if we could find a way of collectively forgiving ourselves as a country, now not to say that we sweep it under the rug and forget that it ever happened. But we have to have some kind of an emotional awakening that says we're going to choose to love each other rather than to just continue to, or cancel each other. Like, oh, well, you said this and that doesn't align with my way of thinking, and so screw you, you're done. You know what I mean? I think this really becomes a matter of unity and inclusion rather than all of these things are, whenever you have that phone in front of you, whenever you have that screen in front of you, you think you don't need a companion because you have it right there.
Yes.
So then you've created this sense of like, well, I'm independent, I don't really need that. Screw you, I can just go find friends on the internet.
Yes.
And I mean and that's not sustainable.
So would you say that the ease of access to like social media and communication has caused a sense of polarization, which then led to the current known gratification of cancel culture? So if I don't like what you say because I have the ease of access to communication, I can just push you away and try to find someone who falls in my line.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, the internet is a very scary place where you can go find anything and everything, and everyone can have an identity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever you're into, you'll find someone else out there that you can relate to, which is good. But again, it's an artificial sense of gratitude. Yeah. It's not a real genuine human connection. And just, learning to disagree.
Learning to disagree.
Right.
And I couldn't agree more. So, and
before you do that, actually, but let's make it known before y'all go off and say we think the internet's a bad place. It's not, because I wouldn't have known Michael if I didn't already have a good picture of who he was. Now, I got to confirm it by actually having to sit down and have a conversation with him. So it was the and, not the or. So.
Definitely. And I mean, as you can see, even though it's been, we've had some different hard conversations about things that normally online you'd see people smacking each other. I mean, by your description of things, has really kind of brought us into the ability for me to see a different view a little bit that I maybe not have considered a little bit there, and I'm hoping that you've maybe at least been able to think about some things I've said. And I mean, as you can see, we're having a conversation, but we're not, killing each other. And
we're being adults.
And
I'm in the middle, so y'all better not.
Even after the break, you'll see he'll still be here.
Yeah.
And stuff. So and speaking
Stick
of the break,
around. Stick around.
We're actually gonna go take a quick break right now because I am running low on my soda.
You guys go get some soda. Yeah.
And we've actually got some questions already piling up and mounting, and so we're gonna come back. We're gonna do a whole bunch of questions and kind of see what you guys have to say, and then we'll see you guys soon. Go and watch this video.
You guys are awesome.
We got rid of Aunt Jemima, we got rid of Uncle Ben's, but I am wildly triggered by the brands and the photos that I see in this grocery store. Using a polar bear to sell your ice cream, Klondike? Did you know polar bears were extinct? No thank you. Canceled. Paw Patrol mac and cheese. Listen, defund the police, defund Paw Patrol. V8, you know what kind of emissions an engine like that puts out into the environment? I drive a Prius and that is canceled. Okay, I don't exactly know who this guy is, but I don't like his look at all. I don't like anything that this guy stands for. Canceled. White rice, brown rice. Why they gotta be separated? Think about it. Canceled. Uncle Ben's? Absolutely offended by that. Listen, do I know any minorities myself? No, I don't, but I feel very confident speaking on their behalf on the internet. Hola, Tapatio. Una pregunta. You ever heard of cultural appropriation? Canceled. Oh, look at there. It's a woman leading a cow against its will to the slaughter. Selling popsicles shaped as bullets. Wow, absolutely canceled. Blue Ribbon, everyone's a winner. Thank you, that is the only brand of ice cream I will support. Rebel Ice Cream, wow, why don't you just change this to Soldier in the Confederate Army ice cream? Okay, I just looked up Red Baron. Red Baron is a fighter pilot in the German Air Force in World War I. Seems extremely anti-fast. You want to cancel him? We can if we want. I'll look up some mistakes on the internet. The Keebler Elves, isn't that cute? Well, it's 2020. They're called little people. Canceled. Tombstone. What stands on top of a tombstone? A statue. Tear them all down. That's offensive to atheists? Canceled immediately. Oh, Little Debbie. Why does she have to have red hair? Offensive to gingers. Canceled. Hey, Granny Smith. You ever heard of, ageism? Canceled. What do we have here? Country gravy, $7.58. Brown gravy, $7.47. I'm just saying, think about it. Tupac. Canceled. It's 2020 and Oreo is still separating the light and the dark. You know who's out here solving racism in a Walmart? Duplex. 1850. You know what those dates are? Pre-Civil War. You know another term that means pre-Civil War? Antebellum. That's right. Just like the band, that brand is canceled. Oh, super fun. Barnum & Bailey's Animal Cruelty Crackers. Canceled. A woman carrying salt alone in the rain. Absolutely not. Just looked up the definition of minion. 1, an underling or follower of a powerful person. 2, a servant. Canceled. If the Dixie Chicks are canceled, if I consume any of them, I also support the political and moral choices of everyone involved in that company, which makes literally no sense, but it's 2020 and here we...
Soap to sniff?
No, actually, they took it away from me. They said I was kind of abusing it a little bit, and now I got to go to
it is a little
SA,
it's a little addictive. It's a little addictive.
But actually, just if you're joining us right now, we want to also welcome back Michael Anderley, but he brought something that, do you want to advertise that again?
Oh my goodness, you guys are so kind.
They didn't really take it back, so we just wanted to say we have these soaps he brought us. They smell absolutely normal.
Normal? They're normal
soaps. They smell totally normal.
They smell totally normal, yes. No, they smell absolutely amazing, I meant to say. And this one here is called Herb Garden.
That's
and this one is Earl Grey. And this is the one that he gave me. And I've been like, my nose has been all up inside this thing lately, so it's been awesome.
Do you say all up inside?
All up inside this thing.
All up inside. That's why he hangs out with me. I teach him. All up inside.
So,
Get it right. Anyway. Boom
Okay.
goes to dynamite, huh?
Boom goes. Wait, we already did the boom goes.
Oh,
Dynamite.
that's
That was the last
right.
one.
Yes.
He's falling behind here, man.
I'm still in the
Falling
next
behind.
segment.
We're in the point where we take all of the questions that have been being asked over the last an hour and a half or so, and we start reading them and we try to answer them as horribly as we can. No, we're going to make our best attempt to answer these.
Yes. Hey guys, keep them coming. Just because we have a piece of paper here doesn't mean that we can't take more.
Yeah, so if we get through all these and we have time left, we'll take more questions. Okay.
Let's do it.
And then we can always try to answer them throughout the weeks.
And you told us to keep our answers short, so we're
Yes. So the first one on here, it says, at what extent should that's based on the previous one. So based off of cancel culture attitudes, it has shown an increase in teen suicide, which I think it's actually going to play really close to what our next show is going to be about, which is cancel culture and effect of teen suicide. And
which is very near to my heart, and all of our hearts for that matter, because we all have close to teens, if not teens already. But I would go actually make that a little bit larger. It's not just cancel culture that's contributing to that. There's a number of factors. Of course, it might, because we're in a pandemic, and what do kids do all the time now? Sit in front of a TV or a computer screen and go on social media. But also, I did a TED Talk a while ago, and I said on online bullying. And so I would give the answer of it's that and online bullying as well. And one of the reasons why it's such a pandemic in and of itself is because they're constantly getting a ding on their phone. So bullying can be a continuous rapid fire. So it's really, you can't escape it, and you have a lot of kids that find themselves by themselves.
Would you say that the teens these days tend to root their identity and the profile and the presence they have online? So when they see that their presence is being damaged through whether it's a cancel culture type of act or either bullying or something like that, it begins to really break down that identity and the roots of where they're at. So therefore, they begin to feel lost, and that kind of leads into, a destructive pattern. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Feeling of loss.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's all about what creates your self-worth and your self-love. And when you're constantly under that lens of scrutiny from even a lot of times people that you don't even know, personally.
Yes.
Then that can be incredibly damaging to your self-esteem and your self-worth. So
it's the ghost. It's the who's saying this about me.
Yep.
Who thinks they know me? Yeah.
Internet phantoms.
Internet phantoms.
Yes. All right, let's move on to another one. Let's see. So one of these was a big question that was broken down, so I'm trying to read into it. So I'm going to read it, and it may not make fully sense, but we'll pick out what we can out of it. Okay. He was saying that they need. I'm assuming maybe you. He was saying that they need to learn lessons based upon their own actions, which I agree. But a lot of parents don't take the time to monitor and teach how to act on social media. And it leads to teens and young adults making huge mistakes. So at what extent do we let them learn these lessons without stepping in?
Ooh, good question.
Well, as soon as you figure that out, make sure and email me.
Right. Because we want to know who you are in your book. We want your book.
I will buy your book.
Yes. Yes. Do they do books anymore?
I think they
ebook, audiobook.
I'm not the kind of person that can read on a Kindle or on a screen very well. I'm the person who can't.
I'm just the person who can't read. So.
You're doing great.
There's a word for that. I think it's really all about your parenting styles and your background, the things that your family finds value in. We just recently realized, this is kind of maybe a little personal story. So the kids play video games online with their friends, and then they can use their messenger app, and they can all talk, and it's a party. You have five little dudes on there playing Minecraft or whatever they're doing together, And it's hilarious. And at this point, with the limitations of school and the pandemic, it's really one of their only social outlets. So we're encouraging that. However, my wife and I had some work around the house that we were finishing, and one night, it was a Saturday night, we were like, I wonder how long these other kids stay on the computer and play video games until.
All night.
And we were like, let's just let it go and see.
Yep.
And at about 10:20, we were like, okay.
They're just getting started.
Our kids usually go to bed at 9:30. And so I think it's one of those things, we realized that we somehow were maybe the strict parents, which I thought was ridiculous. But also was kind of an eye-opener too, that none of us who are doing modern parenting really have a guidebook or any kind of manual to follow, and we don't even really know the repercussions of what's going to happen to young adults who are immersed in the effects of social media and what it's doing to, again, your self-worth and your self-love.
I like what you said, but that second part of that reading, I think I'd teach my daughter that when I can't control what you put on Facebook, but just know that I see it.
Right.
That's the first thing, if she's old enough to be on Facebook.
Right.
The other thing is, too, I tell her, please don't get on there and use it as your personal diary.
Mm-hmm.
That is not a tell-all.
Discretion.
Discretion.
Right.
If you wouldn't stand up in the town square on a soapbox and use a loudspeaker to shout that out,
right?
I shouldn't put it on Facebook.
Because you really did.
It's going to go further on
Facebook, Snapchat, or Twitter,
yeah.
or what's the other ones?
What's the
Parler? TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok.
The TikTok.
Parler.
Moo
or something like Moo Woo.
Yeah.
Moo Woo.
I don't. What is that one?
Hey, Moo Woo. It's canceled, guys. It's canceled.
MeWe, sorry.
MeWe, it's a MeWe.
I don't even know anymore.
You guys have MeWe?
I can't keep up with them.
No.
Who needs
But that's
to?
the problem.
Yeah.
You don't know which social media platform your daughter or your son's on.
Yeah, they just need to all get together and just be squish them into a box.
I think that's kind of where it's going. I think that you see that there's already some sort of the corporate conglomerates is always as happening, and when this company buys this company, and then this company buys this company, and all of a sudden they're all under the same umbrella.
I think there's laws about that called monopolization
well,
too.
you would think. You would think. Good thing Mr. Bezos has just recently retired from his monopolized position.
That's a whole nother show.
Let's table that for another piece of it. But it does fit the cancel culture with what happened to Parler.
True.
But we're going to save that for the business portion of it. So
what happened with Parler?
You didn't hear it?
You didn't hear it?
Parler.
You guys know.
So Amazon and a couple other companies that they used, like Google and everything, and Apple all got together because they didn't feel that Parler was censoring their people enough.
Oh.
And they shut down their access to all their servers, canceled their apps off of Apple and off of Google.
They literally got canceled.
Yeah, they literally got canceled.
Yeah.
And so there was a large lawsuit against Amazon and those guys for it. And just recently,
I think that's dogpiling.
Yeah, I think Amazon, not Amazon, but Parler found new host and is back up, and they just recently canceled the lawsuit against Amazon.
Okay.
I haven't got a chance to read further into why and all the changes on there, but it was a coordinated effort, which is right around the you got to wonder that's almost a monopolization there.
Yeah.
That they can just cut any company they want out at any time. But like I said, let's save that conversation for the business.
So is that corporate cancel culture?
Yeah, that would be. I mean, that's
I guess that, yeah.
It's almost like it. I mean, are they falling within federal laws of what would require them for a corporate organization? We're going to be talking about in the future cancel culture stuff. So we're talking about suicide on the next one. We're going to be talking about cancel in our back pocket. But there's going to be some different conversations. We're going to bring in some experts in to talk about those and how it's affected them, and
John said experts are really smart people if you watch that promo.
Yes. So when I say it could be anyone that's really smart.
Really smart people.
Like
Michael here.
Exactly.
The expert of nothing.
I'm an expert at being an expert.
But I do hear a couple things you pull out. You pull out forgiveness. You're pulling out identity. And gets me to ask more questions about your belief in that. But I got the touch, so that means that.
Yeah, we're going to focus back over here to the to getting through these questions. The next one on here is, what lessons can we teach our children about understanding their own comments and words on their social media platforms? I think we talked a little bit about that, but that is, addictions.
Yep.
And if you can't, kids are so into instant responses. Right. We're trying to teach her, like, just because you didn't immediately get the punishment for it, you might make an act that we find you're still responsible for the act that you did.
Right.
You're going to have to clean it up or whatever it is. So we're trying to teach the core foundation of Newton's third law is every action has a reaction. Yeah. And that comes into not just physics, but also just life.
Immediate consequence, but delayed sometimes.
And there's arguments, as they say, when they're younger, they're and it's a subjective analysis on that. So,
I was thinking of impulse control as something that we're trying to work on a lot with our kids, and that is that rather than just the knee-jerk reacting to everything, you have to have some kind of foresight and impulse control, just to ponder for a second before you. If you made a big enough mistake. Chances are you're probably going to get punched in the face. And I don't necessarily condone violence, but man, it sure solves problems effectively. Within that, if you popped off and you said something stupid and you weren't being considerate and you weren't thinking of the consequences, you got it right there.
It goes back to what you just said about what you said a segment ago about honor.
Right.
I want to teach my daughter the honor. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right.
Kind of thing, and honor and those types of things.
Isn't it amazing how those simple rules from kindergarten are the most time-tested, that's so poignant. I mean, it's an important. Those were the lessons you were first taught, and they still are relevant in your, as old as you'll get.
Yep.
There's two core foundation pieces that I use in everything that I do. I mean, and while I'm obviously not perfect at hitting those, I do the best I can to follow this mantra, and that is love and respect.
Right.
Yeah.
Love people no matter what. Love them, and give them respect. So.
I gotta say that is one thing that, and I hope I can bring this up here, but that's one thing I learned about you. And we'll talk about, when we talk about cancel culture, sometimes we talk about, you find things out after the fact. You always make up your mind in what you read, but we don't go the extra step, as you were talking about, Michael, to go and find out who this person is behind the screen. And one of the things I found out about you, I didn't find it out online. I found it out just getting to know you, is that you're about love and respect. But I had to go the extra mile. I didn't respond to anything. I went the extra mile to find out and have a face-to-face conversation.
Exactly.
With you. So, yeah.
Okay, let's jump
just a plug for you, I guess.
To keep us moving forward.
Go, Joel.
Thank you. And you can buy me online at
a Joel doll. Yeah,
a Joel doll. Yeah.
Everybody has one.
Which we are going to be working on getting ourselves some another shameless
bottleheads. No, you're not.
No.
Okay.
Bobbleheads would be great. I have a 3D printer. We can get those going. No, well, we are actually working on slowly going to get our merchandise together and stuff, because people have requested our
merch.
Logo. You want to show their logo.
Yes.
And stuff. So we'll get some merch with our funky heads on there and stuff. And
yes,
you guys can actively make fun of our funny faces in public.
They're like, yeah. Get to the questions.
Okay, next question. When do we step in as parents, helping our? This is kind of a long one. Bear with me. When do we step in as parents, helping our children understand how to use their social media accounts, and how much we let them learn on their own before we step in to help them learn how to use social media well? It is good to let kids learn things on their own and how to overcome and adapt to control the situations, but when do we step in? So that's kind of like play off the previous one.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's really a subjective response. So based upon what they're doing, what they're interested in, is going to determine how, I'd say how dangerous that social media can be. So if you set it up and you get them interested in kids groups where you know are safe and things like that, your need to step in is going to be a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you're opening them up to more social media where you might find more teens or adults where they're going to have different kind of conversations, different kind of videos, things like that. Like TikTok is a good example. So if I have my daughter on YouTube Kids, I'm going to be more confident in the stuff that she's watching in most cases, versus like if I have her watching stuff on TikTok, I have no idea what she's going to see, so we don't let her watch TikTok. Right. Of course, now they find a way to put TikTok on YouTube, and so we're another battle.
This is forever changing.
I came out the other day and I saw something. I said, "What on earth is that?" Yeah. Which one of the funny things I will say I've seen recently on TikTok, and it's got me wanting to do it, is they take these photos of like when they were kids, and they maybe the baby and the mom or the brothers and sisters together, and 10, 20 years later they reenact that picture, and you get some funny stuff on there. But that's beside.
But I like what you said about age appropriate. So one of the things in discipline, or I should say consequencing, is what we do with kids is when my daughter needs a timeout, it's according to her age. So she has 10 minutes when she's 10, she has 9 when she's 9. So age appropriate. So I'm not going to give my daughter more than what she can handle, especially her frontal lobe. So I want to be able to give age appropriate options for her.
By the way,
based on responsibilities.
Is consequencing a word?
It is now.
It is a word. Consequencing is a word, isn't it?
We're making up our own words here.
No, consequencing is a word.
It's a professional therapy word.
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in and say that most adults don't know how to appropriately use social media, based on my experience.
Mic drop.
Boom.
And
boom.
And so one thing that we can do, that I'm trying to do, and that I struggle with, this is not, I have no authority to speak as someone who's, better than anyone else, is to be role models. Even though you feel like your kids, you think you're a jerk, or they don't want to hear what you have to say, or they don't want to listen to what they're being told, what they see you do is what they eventually will do. Modeling is everything in parenting. It's not really what you say, it's what you do. And
big difference.
And this might be how Mr. Litke and I first met, was me getting on social media and even polite. And Joel had enough grace to answer my questions patiently, and then say, you know what, maybe we should get together and have coffee and sit down. And
it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed that, and we said, hey, let's do it again. Of course, the next time we got a chance to talk is here.
Yeah. Right. Well, the flip side of that, if you didn't get on there and go, what's that sound you made again?
Oh, I know.
Really good. If you didn't actually make your truth known, it wouldn't have been an opportunity.
Speaking of social media, everything being recorded, that sound will live in. I wasn't gonna point it out, but it's in the annals.
We're improvising. This is.
I'm gonna pump the brakes completely on it and go a completely different direction because we have a question in a completely off the realm area. Why did Antifa tear down the statue of Frederick Douglass or the elk at PSU?
Well, my understanding is that it was a bunch of kids who were just pissed, and so what do they call that? Point of action or something, like there's this thing, and I've heard about it. I would like to say, for the record, I am an anti-fascist. I am not a member of Antifa, whatever that is. But I have been keeping an eye on what's been happening around the country all summer long, and it's been a complete, bear with me, shit show. So I think that there is a certain amount of just wanton destruction, that by destroying things, you're trying to make a point about the power that you can assert as civilians. True. The elk thing, I don't feel like it's effective whatsoever. It was incredibly immature.
Portland should be holding these these people that they catch doing this stuff accountable to it in a legal sense?
I think people that are destroying public property should be held accountable. I think that I do personally feel like the amount of resistance that was shown this summer amplified the situation with the protesters. I also can think of one thing in particular. I think it was in August where there was both. I'm going to say both sides protesting against whatever protest was happening based on the occupation at the federal building, and there was about a 5-hour street brawl in the streets of Portland that the cops didn't interject in. I know of several individuals that were arrested and are still waiting to face trial for that, and I'm talking about pointing loaded weapons at people in the streets. So what that kind of stuff is just, it's dangerous and it's ineffective, and I think that, so also if I hadn't talked about this earlier, I grew up in southern Minnesota, about 50 miles outside of Minneapolis. So as a kid, we went to the city for everything: culture, music, art, shopping. That's where I sort of grew up, was in South Minneapolis. I had family and friends that live up there, and I know that area really well. After George Floyd's murder, people would ask me all the time, well, you're from Minnesota, what do you think about what's happening? Like, why would these people burn down their neighborhood? And it made me think of, there's a couple public housing towers in South Minneapolis on Lake Street, and they probably hold maybe 3,500 to 4,000 people each. And you're talking about people that are generally disenfranchised. They don't have financial capabilities to adequately provide for themselves. They're on probably some kind of public assistance, and when they saw a member of their community murdered in the streets in the middle of a pandemic, everyone's been stuck in those towers. It was like throwing a match into a barn full of hay, and it burned. And I think that there's a threshold of what people can tolerate before the dam breaks and all hell breaks loose. So not to say that that was necessarily what happened in Portland. I think that, when I moved to Portland, it was called Little Beirut. And so Portland has always had this very edgy, anarchist sort of reputation to it. And I think that part of that was posturing. Part of that was people looking for some way of resisting the things that they didn't align with or agree with politically. Part of that was trying to sort of piggyback onto that defiance of what was happening. It's complicated.
Yeah. Would you say that when acts like the old, one second, I'll get to you. Would you say that when acts like these kind of happen, would you say that maybe while at the very beginning the original intent was to just simply get a message that a group of people wanted to get out and make known, do maybe like a peaceful protest, and then they progressed, and then maybe some political motivators or something may have gotten there, and next thing you know, it took something from meant to be a good attempt to do something, and they just took it and it went different direction to kind of get out of control.
There was a lot of talk about Portland all summer and it being an anarchist jurisdiction and all these things, but really, when my parents came in to visit this summer, they decided to travel in spite of the pandemic because they just can't not see their grandkids. So my parents were like, "Oh my gosh, is it safe to go into Portland? And what's going on?" And I was like, "Well, let's go drive down there, And we drove through the 3-block radius or whatever, where it was all hell was breaking loose. Right. And what we found was that at noon you had a group of mothers who were speaking about unity and love and helping and forgiveness, and then you would have a group of teachers that led a march across the bridge to bring some kind of awareness to light, and then when it got dark, then you had another wave of people who protested against the police, and then at midnight, you had a bunch of wild asses that wanted to go set things on fire. All of those groups became lumped into one category.
Right.
And I just don't think that's. I mean, it's almost like saying, "Yo, you're a Trump supporter. That means that you're this, and this." You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, well, no, you can't generalize, and you can't just categorize people because it's easier for you. Mm-hmm. You have to understand the nuances and the complexity of how complicated our experience is as Americans.
You said something earlier, and I'm going to get to this one to see real quick. You said something earlier, assumption culture. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You said that is so much of what it is today, and I would love if our producer can actually drop that in our social media.
Hashtag
assumption culture, and pop that up on our screen too, John, if you could.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to say. Go ahead.
No, actually, I thought that was well said. Actually, I have nothing really else to say besides nuanced. But the other thing is too, there's such a thing as groupthink. And it takes on a group tends to take on a life of its own. Whoever's there first sets the tone for the group, and learn that in small group dynamics. And so I would reckon that there are a couple of guys, or were a couple of people down there that didn't even know why they were doing what they were doing.
There were people that just went to spectate.
Yes.
You know, and I had friends that were like, I want to just go see what's going on.
Yeah.
I just want to go see the spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to just go eat free ribs.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some people that were like, have you had the ribs? And I was like, no, I haven't had the ribs, but maybe if they're serving free ribs down there.
I'm going to have to go down there and get free ribs.
I got to watch the ribs right now.
Wait a minute. Shoot. I'm not going to check out any buildings, but I'll go down there and have free ribs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go see if there's a restaurant. I want some ribs now.
Talking about?
Hey, honey, if you're watching, can you order me some ribs somewhere or bring some back from Sandy? I want some ribs.
Shoot.
Okay, we still got a bunch of questions on here, and
we have some time.
I'm gonna move on. So it says, me and a few friends were discussing racial sensitivity at the country restaurant, a country restaurant, and were in so many words ushered out because of the topic. Is that cancel culture? So I wanted to just reiterate that it says at a country restaurant, I think. So
yeah, we're gonna say at a.
There's
actually at a.
Well, there's a place in town called The Country, and I don't want to specify to that. Yeah, it's at a country restaurant.
At a. So. Yeah. So, you want to go there first, because actually I'm a little bit closely connected to this question.
I think you should feel this one.
So yours.
Man, the interesting part is I was part of that story. The context is we were getting ready to talk about a conversation that we were going to have on race, and it was heard, and as we were going around the table as a think tank, would and give our ideas. Just 3 of us.
Okay.
And
so a small tank.
Yeah, a small tank. But we had big mouths in a small tank. So people obviously heard that conversation, and there was an uncomfortable situation that happened where a young lady came to us and said that after we get our food and after we pay for our food, that essentially we need to move on. So then I went back and asked this person if she was uncomfortable with the conversation, and she had really only this to say to me, is that we need to watch how we speak. And so that was a interesting one. But what I did was, if there's a problem or a perceived problem, I'll go back and I'll go have a conversation with that person. I will. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, my grandmama would have said, better mind your own. So,
yeah.
But, I mean, you know, again, you're getting into workplace behavior. You're getting into public service. You're getting into free speech. You're getting into probably racial and cultural sensitivity. And I think more so than, I think what cancel culture is allowing people to do is to retract from things that they don't like to deal with and don't want to hear about, rather than engaging them. And rather than going through the dirty, muddy, sticky part of being like, well, we got to work through this, and I'm going to have to listen to you, and I'm probably going to hear some things I don't like, and I can't just turn you off like I have a remote control.
Well, yes.
You know?
And with social media, it's gotten so easy to block those conversations, though.
Literally block.
Yes. So now we've taken block, and actually the bigger picture of that is cancel you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've fallen into victim to that. There's a particular group that, because the leader of that group did not agree with either the questions that I asked him or the what I had to say, I was completely off the group. And including my wife too, we're completely blocked from it. And it's, and being it's a completely public group, it's supposed to be open and everything. And we technically never violated any of the rules. We look back at what we said and never really violated.
Right.
It just was shut off. And so, well, I mean, we suffered cancel culture. It's because they didn't like what we said.
Yeah. I have to go back and say this though, that way down country restaurant did apologize, and so. That was the good thing about, like you said, apology. Do we get on social media and now bash that place?
Well, yeah, you didn't get on there and get that woman fired and say that the whole place is racist, and you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's the thing too, is just being more considerate for your fellow humans.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too is, should an entire business suffer for the actions of an individual or a misunderstanding of a situation? So if they would have, if everybody would gotten, if one person would have said, now if it's the owner, that's a different story, but and they're accountable to their actions for the business. But if let's just say a waitress at a place said or did something that was offensive or racist or whatever else were to be, should someone get online and go, blah, 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 this is a racist company, you don't ever shop there, blah blah blah, because one person may have said something in their own personal views,
right?
And then the flip side of that is, should that person be fired for something they may have said, or should they be, have a conversation with them?
Well, as I have to say this too.
No, that's not a question. That's just me asking.
Yeah, as an owner of a business, if I had an employee on their off time say something, then I would make it very well known that person was on their own time. They weren't on clock time.
Right.
If they had that experience on clock time, it would be I would feel like it would be up to me as the owner of the business to give that statement, to distance myself from that statement of that one person.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it seems like the three of us are self-employed and run our own businesses, but every job that I've been hired for has had some kind of employee conduct training that was sort of setting the bar of what you can get away with and what you can't get away with, and what you can say and what you can't say, and you know what I mean? So there was at least sort of a line drawn in the sand.
I actually do work for a company, and we have it in a handbook.
Right.
But we don't have a specific training to it. At least I don't recall one. But that was years ago when all that happened.
Right. Yeah. But Joe, we were talking about in other places, in other avenues. We're talking about a code of conduct.
Yeah. I mean, well, what he's referring to is we can talk about it. I mean, and Esticated Community Watch, which I'm the president of, and most people know that. The board's reviewing and putting together a code of conduct for members.
Right.
Right. And that's something that I think any organization should have, because there should be an expectation of people that are part of that organization beyond, just how they should act, but what their expectations are, and so people know as well beyond just simple, shouldn't say mean racist things online, things or whatever.
Right.
But yeah,
common sense.
It's a general expectation. Everybody
Hopefully,
sorry,
not so common sometimes.
So if you nothing else, I just want to move on to the next question, because we're getting down to less than 5 minutes here. So it says, why is it heritage, and that's in quotation marks, to fly the Confederate flag? What's the difference there?
Well, I mean, if you want me to respond to that. So racism and slavery are not cultural identifiers, and they are not heritage. They were a practice, and they were a way of accumulating a wildly unnecessary and imbalanced amount of wealth, which still the legacy of that wealth exists today. It's a symbol, you know. It's like a swastika, and I'd also like to point out that the swastika was originally used in Tibetan Buddhism as a holy symbol, and that the SS and Hitler plagiarized that symbol and then used it and redirected the meaning of it. You know, the rebel flag in Oregon in 2021 is just kind of a joke. It's taboo. It's unnecessary. Like, what are you trying to say? Are you from Mississippi? Are your grandparents from Alabama? Did they own slaves? Are you proud of that? Like, just maybe kind of put it in perspective of what you're trying to say when you know, present an image like that. When I see an 18-year-old kid in a shitty old truck with a Confederate flag on it, it takes almost everything that I can muster not to get out and light that thing on fire. Personally, I find it incredibly insulting, and I don't think it's a cultural heritage symbol. I think it's blatantly offensive.
So, just to kind of give the polar argument to that.
By all means.
And I don't want to say that this is where I'm particularly standing on any particular flag or representation. I just want to be the devil's advocate here. So could one say the same thing about the BLM flag?
Well, the BLM flag was not trying to overthrow the United States. I think that the BLM flag represents people who are fighting for racial equality.
But that could be a subjective opinion based upon someone's position.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
What I'm coming into is more of a right to express your views and your opinion.
Certainly.
And so while someone may feel that that particular flag may represent something to them and say something that you may disagree with that, but at the same time they're trying to say that, they may have the opposite feeling about someone who's, you know, putting up the BLM because they want to project a certain meaning and a statement behind that. But on the flip side, the person who has that Confederate flag may have the same, maybe even a misguided view from one towards the other about what they're trying to say and what they represent.
Right. So, and just to clarify, BLM stands for Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.
Black Lives Matter, period. If you don't agree with that, it's because you don't have enough experience and enough exposure and enough compassion and enough dignity to figure it out. The Confederacy is over with. It was squashed. It was defeated. That's the symbol of losers. Sorry, that's my opinion. Okay. That's what I'm going to say.
And that's
that you have the right to hold that opinion. You know, just like anyone else out there might have an alternate view to that, and that's their right to do.
Yeah. So, but the great thing about this is, in the couple of minutes that we have, is that's what this is about, though, you guys.
Exactly.
To have these conversations. What it's also about is, what I think is the awesome thing about this conversation is that there are two people, my brothers here, that are lighter skinned, that would be considered people of power having a discussion about this. Right. And I don't think this would have happened if we weren't a free society.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
And I like, and a lot of people, if I would have brought that up, that statement up in an alternative conversation view, it probably would have turned into possibly a round of fisticuffs. Sure. The fact is that this is what we're trying to show in this conversation is that these are hard topics to talk about. People are just, they can't have that conversation in a lot of cases because they don't understand that it's okay for you to have your views and your opinions and your subjective analysis of something just as much as it is for mine. That's what's great about this country is to have those. Because by you having those views, you're not in any way imposing on those views onto me.
No.
I'm not imposing my views on you.
Then that's my opinion, and that's a very strong opinion. And I was I was trying to be direct, and I was trying to be provocative, and I was trying to make a point because if there's a listener out there who is trying to sort through their own feelings or their own cultural identity about how it pertains to the Confederate flag, I would like you to continue to consider the implications of what that image really means and how it makes people in 2021 feel when it's presented.
Yeah. Sometimes just because we have freedom of speech doesn't make us free to hurt someone else's feelings.
Right.
Yeah. And
Right.
I know we hit our time here, but I want to try to get. We have 3 more questions in
Time
here.
is an illusion.
I know. Should we run over, guys?
It isn't so much when you have a wife that's going to want
I
to
was
come
trying
on.
to wrap it up, but he wants
yeah.
to keep it going. So.
Well, we do have some questions here, and I know we can't get to all of them. There's just more, and I'm sure more were even asked.
I know, we
And
can go into this. We can do this all night.
We can probably try to get to those online, but let's just at least get one more.
Okay.
So why can't we replace the statue or flag that glorifies those that committed atrocities with a memorial remembering those that suffered or remembering their identity in life?
That's exactly what you were talking
I think that's a much more positive approach to not only like you're saying, continuing to remember things that we don't want to repeat as a people, as a country, as a culture, and really to give I don't want to say credit to where it's due, but respect where it's due.
Conversation starters.
Yeah. Right. Well, and you know what I think of when I hope this is along the right lines here, but I was thinking of the 9/11 memorial.
Right.
That is honoring people who have lost their lives, which we've lived through those times. We can all remember where we were at the time. I remember where I was when I saw the Twin Towers fall.
Do you?
And so,
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So being able to bring my kid there.
Of the terrorists that came and took down this building and is giving them credit, and then want to tear that down. I mean, that's.
I don't think so.
You
I mean,
don't
oddly enough, the United States was in a somewhat similar position of being polarized throughout the Bush presidency, and that day, that all ended.
Yes, it did.
There were only Americans.
Yes.
And I've had the opportunity as a young person to travel fairly extensively, and that was one thing that really resonated with me was when I was in South America, Central America, and Europe. I never heard anyone say, "Oh, well, I'm a Afro-French." Or I'm a Asian Italian, you know what I mean? And I went home and I was like, why do we have all these pretexts in front of our names? Like, I'm an African American, I'm a European American, I'm an Asian American, I'm a Mexican American. Why don't we just call ourselves Americans? Like, why are we continuing to sort of segregate ourselves? And it is like conditioning, and it is like our cultural sort of programming. I love just the idea of unifying in spite of our differences.
I couldn't agree more.
And really focusing on what's important.
I completely agree. It's by putting something like that is subcategorizing us into those positions. I mean, it makes sense to have those type of descriptions when you're looking for someone on like a police report or you're describing you on a driver's license. But when you're having a conversation and stuff, say, an American's an American, it doesn't matter whether you're Chinese, French, whether you're a Black American, whether you're an Indian, whether you're Hispanic, it doesn't matter. You're an American. If you're an American and you got citizenship and everything, you're an American.
Right.
So, and yeah, I think that's to sit there and to call that. I mean, it doesn't matter that my family came from Germany, and I think it's there's another one over there, I forget now. I think Scotland or something, but it doesn't matter. I'm an American. And as much as Tony is, as much as yourself is. And I couldn't agree more with that statement. So.
So we may have come from different ships, but we're in the same boat.
Exactly. So, we are out of time, and we do want to kind of wrap this around, and we have some more questions that we'll try to maybe answer online later, or who knows, maybe we'll save them for the next conversation.
Could we have Joel back? Or Joel? Could we have Joel back? Could we have
hopefully have me back?
Could we have Michael back?
We'll try to have him back for a future conversation.
It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you guys. I feel like I have a much better understanding of you two, and I love what you're doing. And I feel really encouraged about the community building that's going on, and just like, small town friends. I'm into that.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, you know, and hopefully we can continue to grow a friendship here and continue to have these great conversations, and hopefully people watching here will maybe strike up a conversation with a friend, especially maybe a family member or a friend who they haven't had the best history with because of, you know, all these things going on, and just try to have that conversation. And
catalysts, you know, in our community, we can continue to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
In our community.
Yeah, next time you find someone that you really disagree with, take the opportunity to talk to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best part of talking is just doing this.
Yeah. Ooh.
Holding your breath until you pass out.
Yes, maybe not that part, but I'm just saying, is this, you know.
Did you say zip it? Is that what you're trying to say?
I was saying just kind of keep
active listening.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And that is the last word, isn't it?
Learn to ask questions.
And also ask questions to understand the situation. That came from our producer over here.
Well, that's the interesting thing. My professor used to say, the more I get to know a person, the more I have questions about.
Right.
Exactly. Well, guys, our next show will be 2 weeks from tonight, 7 o'clock. We'll be talking again about cancel culture, but we'll be relating it back to a much harder subject to talk about, and that's going to be about suicide and team suicide. Yeah. So we'll have a special guest on that has some experience in there. And keep an eye out. Please ask questions. If you haven't gone to YouTube, please go to YouTube, like and subscribe our videos there, because that helps us out. I mean, it it takes a little bit to support this, and we're trying to get around to that. Yeah. And let us know if you have any questions. Check out our website. We got some articles on there, and give us feedback. Thanks, guys, and thank you, Mike, so much for coming out here. It's been great. And
we'll have your information on the website.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So your home address, your phone number, social security address, date of birth.
Everybody come to him, free soap.
We will. We'll put up some information about the soap on the website under the sponsors tab. We'll go ahead and throw it up under there for him. And if you have any questions, by all means, just reach out to us. And you guys have a great time. And
remember, be good to each other.
Yep. Thanks.
Peace.
Doggy.